You're listening to episode 68 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Deena Thompson about how to use intermittent fasting the right way for easier weight loss, better energy, and improved digestion. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm your host as always, and today's guest is someone who is a member of my Inner Circle Mastermind, and she has been someone that I have just absolutely loved working with over the past year plus in helping her grow her business and helping her get really clear about the way that she serves her clients. And this particular guest has a very interesting area of expertise. It's something that is unusual. She's definitely one of the few people I've ever worked with, if not the only people that I've ever worked with that works with this particular type of client, with this particular methodology. And honestly, the amount of knowledge and expertise this person has on this topic is pretty mind-blowing. Even someone like me who has a lot of experience learning about nutrition strategies and functional medicine and all of that, there's a lot that I even have learned from this person over the past year plus about her methodology for helping people with a variety of different health conditions, particularly people with metabolic issues as well as digestive issues. So I'm not going to tease you anymore about the topic. The topic we're talking about today is intermittent fasting and just fasting in general as a strategy for easier weight loss, better energy, improved metabolic function, and improvements in digestion as well. And my guest today is Deena Thompson. Deena is a certified nutrition specialist and a nutritional therapy practitioner with a master's degree in human nutrition and a bachelor's degree in exercise science. Deena spent her teens and early 20s battling chronic digestive issues, undiagnosed autoimmunity, and a slew of mysterious illnesses that left her with extreme fatigue and feeling hopeless about ever having the strength or energy to be the mother, wife, dancer, and world traveler she dreamed of being. Everything changed for Deena when she was introduced to the principles of ancestral health and functional medicine. After working with an incredible functional medicine doctor and applying the principles of ancestral nutrition, Deena was able to recover her health, get back her energy, and show up more fully in her life and for her family. Now, Deena is passionate about helping others overcome digestive issues and fatigue so they can have the freedom to live a full and vibrant life, no longer limited by their health. And Deena has taken a special interest in fasting as a strategy for improving not only digestive health and autoimmunity issues, but as I said before, people with any sort of metabolic disturbances, things like high blood sugar, high blood pressure, abdominal obesity, things that are actually really, really common in our society today because of our eating patterns and the kind of food that we have in abundance in this country. So Deena's approach to fasting is very unique. She's actually come up with her own method for helping people try out and experiment with modified fasting, or protein-sparing modified fasting is another way to explain that. And she actually helps people do that by cooking for themselves and using meal plans that she's developed rather than having to rely on the more popular meal kits that tend to be kind of expensive and also make it that you don't have any control over the food that you're eating when you're doing that modified fast. So like I said, Deena's got an amazing program and she is a wealth of knowledge on fasting. And so I was very excited to have her on the show today so that she can share her expertise with you and let you know if intermittent fasting or modified fasting is something that would be beneficial for you in reaching your health goals. So it's a great episode, lots of information, so get ready to take some notes. And without further ado, here is Deena Thompson. All right, everybody, I am very excited to have with me on the show today, Deena Thompson. Welcome to the podcast, Deena.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, if the people that are listening are not familiar with you, I want them to get to know you. So could you tell us your story and just explain to us how you got so interested in helping people use intermittent fasting and fasting in general to improve their health?
Yeah. My experience with fasting actually goes way back because I grew up in a very religious Christian home and fasting was a part of our religion. So once a month, every month, there was a fast Sunday and it was a church-wide thing. And you would go 24 hours without food or water or any kind of drink. And then the money that you saved that you weren't spending on food, you would donate to the homeless or the needy, people that maybe were going without food more often than you were. And so it was just a part of my upbringing. And I think there were a couple of experiences in my life that really brought to light the healing power of fasting. And one of those was when I was just a little kid. When I was like 6 or 7 years old, my baby brother, Zachary, got really sick and he had to go to the hospital and he was in a special children's hospital. And our congregation and like neighbors, friends, even people that weren't part of the church that I grew up in participated in doing a fast for him. So even though, me as a little child, I was not fasting probably, and Zachary himself was not fasting, everybody else fasted for him. And he had a really miraculous recovery. The doctors told us that he wasn't going to live, and that's what prompted the fast. And we were able to bring him home and he recovered from that illness for a little while. And he was healthy for a pretty long time after that. It had a big impression on me as a child of just the healing power of fasting and also of, doing something in a group setting as well. That was really powerful. And then as I got older, and went through my grad school program in nutrition and learned more about the science of fasting and how it has, healing powers outside of a religious context. And I worked for a doctor who specialized in treating people with cognitive decline and dementia. And that was part of my clinical hours to get my license. She was my supervisor and I worked for her for about 2.5 years, getting my hours. And she used fasting in her practice to help with cognitive decline and dementia, and also with a lot of metabolic disease. We had a lot of patients that had diabetes or prediabetes. They might have had a lot of fatigue or high blood pressure, things like that. And she used fasting pretty regularly with most of the patients. And I saw it really transform their health. And so that's where I got really interested in fasting from a more scientific perspective, but it was also a part of my whole life growing up.
That's really interesting. We do fasts as a church sometimes, but not every month for sure. And I feel like a lot of times people are kind of doing them on their own. It's not really this like corporate thing that people are doing. But my husband actually, I forget when it was, might have been a little bit more than a few months ago. We're recording in 2020 and I feel like 2020 has been a big blur. So, but I think he's done a few fasts for his perspective, more of a spiritual perspective, but even like going like 4 days without eating. I was like, when he was doing it this one time, I was like, there's no way I would ever be able to go 4 days without eating. So I know that that's not what you teach necessarily, to go 4 days without eating, but I know that we've had a couple people in our church do like pretty long water fasts, which, that's great for them. I just don't see myself ever doing it that way because I don't think I would be a very pleasant person to be around.
Yeah. The good news is that you don't have to. You can get a lot of great benefits from other types of fasting and modalities. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that brings me to my first question about fasting for you, because the times that I've tried fasting more significantly, like on purpose, I would say doing a fast, I don't usually feel great. So selfishly, I would love to know, what are some of the mistakes that people make when they're trying fasting?
Well, fasting in general or intermittent fasting specifically?
Either, both.
Okay. I think I'll cover intermittent fasting first because I think it's one that's really hot topic and a lot of people are trying it and doing it. And a lot of people like you are not feeling so hot when they're doing it. And I think it's important. Well, first I'll kind of define what it is, because intermittent fasting is kind of an umbrella term and it includes a bunch of different types of intermittent fasting. Basically, it's just a fast that you do intermittently, and it can include a few different types. So the most common that people are usually referring to is time restricted eating, when they're kind of eating all their food within a set number of hours, and then they're fasting the rest of the hours. Intermittent fasting also includes like alternate day fasting, where somebody's eating a normal meals, regularly one day, and then they're doing a fast or a modified fast on another day. And they're kind of alternating between regular eating and a modified or a fasted state. And then, there's a couple of different types, but most people are referring to time restricted eating. And the most common type of time restricted eating is a 16-8. And that's a 16-hour fast and an 8-hour eating window. I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is jumping right into that. So in the United States, at least, most people spend or eat over a 15-hour time period during the day. And so to go from like eating all your meals over 15 hours to eating all your meals over 8 hours, you almost cut that in half. Like that's a big jump. And so a lot of people will experience episodes of like low blood sugar, their energy crashes, their mood tanks, they're irritable and angry, they don't feel very good, and they just end up hungrier than ever. And it can really backfire for people. So I think one mistake is just to jump into this like rigid schedule of fasting for 16 hours and eating for 8 hours just right off the bat without really considering where your own health is at metabolically, if you've ever done fasting before. Because if you're coming from a 15-hour eating window and jumping into an 8-hour eating window, it's going to be a bumpy ride, I think. There's a lot of science to support that a much broader eating window, and you don't need as long of a fast to get a lot of the health benefits. So with a lot of the research, people can experience some of the same weight loss, the same benefits for like longevity and even cancer recurrence prevention. There's really interesting research on women with breast cancer who do intermittent fasting and have lower recurrence rates of breast cancer than women who don't do it. But it's just like a 10 or 12-hour eating window. It's not 8, right? It doesn't have to be that strict for you to get a lot of the benefits. So what I recommend for people is to just see where you're at normally, and then just trim it by an hour or two. And that can be a really good starting place. You don't have to dive into a really rigid time frame. And then one of the other biggest mistake, and I really just think this is the biggest, a huge mistake that most people make, is that they're skipping breakfast. And we are really built as human species to eat and function on like a diurnal pattern. When the sun is up and it's light outside, our bodies are ready to eat. Our digestive system's on, our metabolism is on. Everything's working in a way that it's really the best time to be eating during the bright daylight hours. And when people do intermittent fasting, they're usually skipping breakfast and they're delaying their eating, and they're skipping that time of day when their metabolism is the most active, like their body's ready to eat and ready to use fuel in a really great way and to fuel their energy and also sets the hormonal rhythm for the whole day and really establishes good blood sugar when we eat in the morning. So I think skipping breakfast is a really big mistake for people that are doing intermittent fasting. We're meant to eat during the day. We're meant to fast at night. And so when people do it kind of the wrong way and they're skipping breakfast, they end up eating more of their calories later in the day when it's getting darker and your metabolism has slowed down, your digestive system has slowed down, and it can backfire in a lot of different ways. One is that we have a very pronounced difference in blood sugar responses to the same food, just depending on when we eat them. So eating something in the morning when the sun is up, we actually have a much lower blood sugar response, a lower insulin response, and we burn more of those calories for energy because we're very active. When we eat something, that exact same meal, you could eat the exact same meal, but have it for dinner, and you're going to have a higher blood sugar response, a higher insulin response. You're not going to be using those calories as effectively for your energy. They're more likely to just be stored because you're not as active and things are kind of slowing down for the night. So in that way, it can really backfire because a lot of people use intermittent fasting as a way to lose weight or to maintain weight loss that they've achieved. And I think it can kind of do the opposite. It can make people hungrier when they skip breakfast. They're hungrier later in the day. They have more food cravings, especially at night. And when we really fuel well in the morning, it sets us up for a better day. We have better blood sugar all day long. We have less food cravings, and our hunger naturally diminishes the way that it's supposed to, the way like we're really built as humans to have our hunger diminish as it gets darker outside and go into a fasted state. And I think people are just kind of doing it backwards.
That's interesting because I feel like I haven't dabbled in the 16/8 intermittent fasting in a long time, but I think I used to try it. Gosh, it must have been like a couple of years ago at this point. Where do you think that belief came from that skipping breakfast would be the best option for that 16/8 window?
I think it's really just easier to do for most people. So when you wake up in the morning, you have a natural rise in cortisol, which is kind of a stress hormone, but it's also your get up and go hormone, right? And it helps us get motivated and energized for the day. And we can have some natural hunger suppression as a result of that. Also, I think like for people's just schedules and lives, they want to eat together with their family or their social activities in the evening and things like that. And so it's just easier if you're going to be fasting to cut it off in the morning when everybody's kind of going their own way. And so I really think it's a matter of convenience and ease. So in one sense, it's easier. I mean, a lot of people feel like it's easier to fast in the morning, but I will tell you, and from my clients that do intermittent fasting the way that I teach it, it actually feels way easier on your body to fuel really well in the morning and to do your fasting in the evening. It's hard maybe socially sometimes. And one of the great things about intermittent fasting is that you can get a lot of the benefits. You don't have to do it all the time. So what I tell my clients is that, if you can do it 3-4 days of the week, you can get a lot of the benefit. And then maybe when you have those social activities and things like that, then you don't worry about it so much. And you do maybe have, pizza late at night, or you have a glass of wine or whatever it is that they're, so they can enjoy their lives and their family and things like that and their friendships. So yeah, I think it came from a place of convenience and also that natural hunger suppression that can come with elevated stress hormones. We can just kind of power through in the morning, and in the evening, it's much harder to do.
Well, especially if you include coffee, right? If you're having a little caffeine to give you some energy, and also I always found that coffee suppresses my appetite, and I don't know if that's probably something that actually happens, but it never made me feel good to do that whole like bulletproof coffee thing in the morning or whatever. So,
Yeah.
and I would imagine women and men obviously are going to tolerate things differently depending on, what time of the day that they're starting their first meal or wrapping up their food. But what you said before about the average American eating for 15 hours, I was like trying to do the math in my head about like what would that mean about like how early they're eating and then like how late they're eating. Cause I'm trying to think 15 hours. I mean, that would be like if you had breakfast at 7, you would be eating until like 10 o'clock at night. And I guess people do that.
And it's not that people are eating their dinner at 10 o'clock at night, but they might be having, some ice cream or chocolate. I mean, usually when we're eating at 10 o'clock at night, it's not the healthiest food choices, or it's a glass of wine, or it's, they're out with friends and get some hot wings or something like that. But yeah, it is like, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty much from like the minute they wake up to the minute they go to bed. And the only time people are fasting is while they're sleeping.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to intermittent fasting, as I was mentioning, and maybe I was just doing it wrong, so maybe it would work better for me if I did it the way that you teach. How do you know if intermittent fasting is a good option for you? Is it right for everybody, or are there people that should not experiment with intermittent fasting?
Yeah, I think that's such an important question to address. So first of all, everybody's already doing some kind of intermittent fasting. I don't think there's anybody out there that's getting up in the middle of the night and eating a meal. I mean, maybe, but not too many of us. Most of us are already doing some kind of chunk of time where we're in a fasted state. And as humans, we have a very natural feasting, fasting cycle, or feeding, fasting cycle, right? We feed during the day, we fast during the night, and other animals have opposite patterns, if they're nocturnal or something like that. But all humans do fasting and feeding at different times of the day. So you're already doing some kind of intermittent fasting. Whether it's intentional or not is another question. So I think on some level, it's very natural for us to be doing that and to have some time when we're not in a fed state, we're in a fasted state. I think that's really important for our health. But for people who want to do intermittent fasting on more of a, intentional basis where they're limiting the time that they're eating, there are groups of people that it's not so great for. One is during periods of like rapid growth. So childhood, adolescence, pregnancy, nursing. It's not that intermittent fasting is necessarily a bad thing because, like I said, it's a very natural thing, but it's not the goal, right? During that time, getting adequate nutrition and nutrients for growth and fueling adequate growth, during those time periods is the priority. And if setting some kind of rigid eating, fasting schedule is going to limit that in any way, I would say it's, not a great thing for somebody's health. Also, especially speaking to pregnant or nursing women is probably more of your audience, not so much the children. You're probably there's so much going on during that time of life, and it's very stressful. And we have to remember that fasting, any kind of fasting, beyond what's typical, is very stressful on our bodies. And for a pregnant or nursing woman, getting adequate nutrition is really the focus of that. And she doesn't need to be restricting eating times in any way. And if, especially during pregnancy, like, I don't know, I mean, you haven't had that experience yet, but I know for me, there's so many food aversions and like things that don't sound good and don't smell good and nausea and things like that. You're probably already doing a lot of fasting, especially in that first trimester. So that's one scenario, is kind of that periods of rapid growth where intermittent fasting, intentionally restricting your eating window, is probably not the best idea. And really the focus needs to be on nourishing your body, your baby, the child that's growing, things like that. I think the other scenario that comes top of mind for me is just for people who have a history of disordered eating, then intermittent fasting can kind of take on a new flavor of that for people. And I just really caution people that have a history of really restrictive eating from getting into intermittent fasting, because you can be in the wrong frame of mind and it can get to be too restrictive, right? A lot of people think, if intermittent fasting is good, a lot of times we jump into, if some is good, more is better. And that's not always the case. And there's definitely a point of diminishing return when it comes to fasting. We really need to be nourishing our bodies well during the feeding period in order for fasting to be a healing and healthy thing for us. And so for people that have yo-yo dieted or have restricting eating patterns in their history, then I would say maybe it's not for you, or working with somebody who can help coach you through that is really important. And then last, I think of course, there are people with maybe some genetic metabolic disorders that fasting's not appropriate for. And with people with diabetes, either type 1 or type 2 diabetes that are on blood sugar lowering medications, either of those groups of people, you have to be really careful with doing any kind of fasting. So that's something that they would need to do under the care of a healthcare professional.
That makes sense. So on the flip side of that, are there certain populations that fasting would be a good thing to consider as a strategy?
Yeah, I think it's really great for most of the rest of the population. Like I said before, it's kind of something we're already doing. So it can be something that we can just do consciously and make a little bit more effort around and get a lot of benefits out of. I think the people that are best suited for fasting are people that have a little extra weight to lose. One of the things about fasting that happens, especially on a longer fast, like once you've gone over 24 hours, is that we start to tap into our muscles and use those amino acids in our muscle tissue to, fuel our glucose needs, our blood sugar needs. And if you have fat to lose, you have some extra padding on you, then you burn a lot more fat during a fast. And somebody that's already lean is going to tap into that muscle tissue earlier, and they're going to lose a little bit of muscle tissue on a longer fast. So a lean person, I think, should stick with shorter fasting time periods. And if you've got some extra padding, some extra weight to lose, and fat to burn, then you can do a longer fast much more safely without some of the negative side effects. So there are changes that happen during a fast that really protect our muscle tissue, but we do start to tap into some of it after maybe day 2 or 3 on any kind of fasting regime. So that doesn't apply for intermittent fasting, because that fasting window is very short, right? You're just fasting for maybe 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, maybe at the most. And so we don't ever really break down our muscle tissue, which makes it safer for people to do, whether they're really lean or where they've got some extra body fat to lose. It's especially beneficial for people that have markers of metabolic issues. So if they've got abdominal obesity, so they carry a lot of their weight around their middle section, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, those are cases where fasting can be really beneficial. Kind of forces your body to tap into its fat stores, and to lower those things very naturally and in a very healthy way. One of the really unique things about fasting is that if you have high blood pressure, you get lower blood pressure as a result of doing fasting. If you have normal blood pressure, then it stays normal. It doesn't go lower. And so it can be very adaptive, right? So for somebody with high blood sugar, it can help bring their blood sugar down. For somebody that already has normal blood sugar, it can just help to maintain those benefits. So I think it has a really wide application. There are a lot of people that can benefit from fasting. Those that can benefit the most are probably those with a little extra weight to lose and people that have some markers of metabolic issues like that, abdominal obesity and blood pressure and things like that.
Which is, I'm sure, a lot of people in this country, unfortunately, since we have so much food availability. And again, eating late or eating in the middle of the night or something is actually a lot more common than probably what I even realize. I will say, caveat is that there are certain populations that eating, and you already mentioned things like breastfeeding and pregnancy and all of that. I'll throw in there anyone with hypothalamic amenorrhea, since I know a lot of my audience has that issue. One of the recommendations I make for that group is having food before bed, like a snack before bed. And so that would obviously kind of rule out the normal intermittent fasting or time restricted eating strategies. But I think anytime somebody's struggling to get enough calories during the day, fasting in general is probably not something they want to do. So, if somebody has cancer, maybe that would maybe be a little bit dangerous to do something if they're already having a hard time eating or anything like that. So now I know that you teach another type of fasting that is not the same as time restricted eating. And I believe it's protein sparing modified fasting. Is that like the official scientific term?
Yeah.
You would know more than me. I always feel like I like before I started working with Deena in business coaching, I didn't even know that like intermittent fasting wasn't the same as time restricted eating. So I know that the protein sparing fasting is another type. Can you explain to the audience what that is?
Yeah, it's really cool. I think I've kind of fallen in love with the science behind it and the applicability across like a wide range of health concerns that people have. So with modified fasting and this protein sparing, this really came about as the work of Dr. Walter Longo, and he is a researcher, I believe in Loma Linda, California, but he's Italian originally and grew up in one of those like centenarian towns, right, where you have really long-lived population. And he's always been interested in longevity and studying it. So that's one of the things he studies. And one thing he knew from his research was that fasting prolonged life, or not fasting necessarily, but calorie restriction could prolong life. And most of this research is in like worms, flies, right, mice, not necessarily humans. So that's really important to note. But he noticed that in a lot of animals that calorie restriction could prolong life and it could prolong health. So health span, the years that an animal spends healthy and disease-free. And he was really interested in that and wanted to see, does this apply to humans? And found that yes, that it also applies to humans in a lot of ways, that there were a lot of health prolonging benefits of calorie restriction. But calorie restriction is just like not eating enough, also comes with some downsides, right? Being undernourished chronically can come with a lot of health problems. And I know that's something that you are really passionate about and educate women a lot on that topic. And so he wanted to find a way, is there a way to get these benefits without the drawbacks? And that's kind of where this modified fasting came to be. So he found out that you could mimic the fasted state by restricting protein specifically and certain amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. There's certain ones that tend to trigger a fed state more than others. And so you have to keep that really minimal. The calories are really low, but if you keep the protein just right, the fat, the carbs, all of that, you get it just right, you can mimic a fasted state and somebody can still eat. So they get the benefits of fasting without some of the drawbacks of malnourishment or undernourishment. Also some of the, blood sugar issues and the fact that it's just really hard to not eat anything. So he created a kit that he provides for people that follows these exact ratios and has done some clinical trials in humans, which is always really important. We want to make sure the research that we're reading applies to people, not necessarily just to mice and worms, and has gotten some really amazing results for people, and especially in that kind of metabolic health arena, right? So people with high cholesterol, high blood pressure, they've got some weight to lose, that we see some really significant changes in health in a shorter amount of time, right? Maybe what would take you a whole year to get if you were doing regular diet lifestyle change, you can get in a matter of a couple of months with a few cycles of this modified fasting. So it's different in that it's prolonged. It's multiple days that you're doing it, but you get to eat all of those days. It's just a very specific amount and types of foods that are eaten so that you stay in a fasted state, but you still get to eat a little bit of food.
I feel like I've seen a couple people doing those kits online, and I feel like there's always a couple of days in the beginning that they don't always feel the best, but then by the end of it, they feel a lot better. Is that your experience with working with people through fasts like that?
Yes. And it's very common. And we've got a little bit of science to tell us why. I mean, in those first couple of days, your body, you have enough glucose stored on board, usually for about 24 to 36 hours before your body's starts to freak out and go, where's the food? And so there's kind of this ugly transition period of, if you're normally eating, every couple of hours and then you're not, or you're eating on a modified fast, you're eating a specific food and less of it, you get really hungry in those first couple of days because your body's used to being fed more often. And people's blood sugar might get a little wonky in those first couple of days as their body tries to adapt. And then once you get into ketosis, where you have ketones that are fueling your brain, people feel really energized, really clear-minded, very focused and sharp. A lot of people will say, just feel like I got turned on, and they get a lot done. And also, you're not spending as much time in the kitchen and cooking, so it can be very freeing as far as your time and energy goes. And so usually days 3, 4, and 5, with a modified fast, it's typically 3 to 5 days. Those are the days that people just kind of sail through and they're like, I'm not so hungry and I just feel really energized and I could do this forever, and I just have to tell them not to. But they feel really good during those. But the first couple of days can be a little rough as your body's kind of transitioning. It's out of fuel and it hasn't quite yet switched over to tapping into your fat stores and making ketones, and that hasn't happened yet. So there's kind of a lull.
And I would imagine that the state of somebody's health going into a fast like that is going to make a huge difference in how they tolerate it.
Yeah, huge difference. Huge difference. I think the more, blood sugar issues that somebody's coming with, that can be a little bit rougher for sure. And that's why I think that modified fasting is a really great way to do fasting for people that have pre-existing conditions or metabolic issues. They've got blood sugar imbalances, because it's just a much smoother and easier transition than just a full-on fast. But yes, the more metabolically healthy somebody is, the quicker they're going to be able to tap into their fat stores. And those fat stores can then supply their energy needs very quickly. So they have a much smoother transition in and out of fasting.
And I know that you teach clients how to do these fasts, whether it's using Dr. Longo's kits or your own meal plans that you provide. Do you have any quick tips for somebody who's thinking about doing modified fasting when it comes to preparing for a fast? Because I know we've talked a lot about your program and the way that you work with people. I know that you can't just start without any sort of, I guess you could. You may not feel that great if you just start without any sort of preparation. So any quick tips? Obviously we won't be able to cover everything that you suggest, but anything that you would want the listeners to know if they're thinking about trying a kit like that?
Yeah. One of the things I do, so I have a program where I take people through this process, and we actually spend a whole month before we ever do a fast preparing our bodies for it. So I think that's really valuable and really important. And I will tell you that right now, my group program, they're in a fast. They did one this last week. And for most of them, it was their first fast. And I've coached people through fasting, like through the doctor's office and things like that before without preparing their bodies. And I will tell you that the clients in my program right now are doing great. None of them had any of the common issues that crop up because we really prepared them for it a whole month before. So what I can say for your audience is that you have to fight the urge to like eat a whole bunch of food before your fast. So that's something that a lot of people will do is they'll just like stock up the night before and eat a lot, or maybe eat, cake and ice cream or something like that, because they're like, oh, I'm going on a fast and I'm not going to be able to eat what I want or be able to have this. And so there can be a little bit of a, where they just eat a whole lot of food before they go into their fast. And this can make it a lot harder to make that transition into a fasted state. And it can also delay how long it takes you to get into that really magical fasted state where you're energized and you feel amazing and your hunger suppresses and you just feel really great. So what I tell people is to go low carb in and low carb out. And because it will help you get into that fasted state a little bit quicker. So that meal, that dinner before, the night before you start your fast can be a lower carb meal. So maybe a nice steak and salad or something like that, because it helps your blood sugar, your glucose levels to naturally kind of lower overnight, and you get into a fasted state much quicker. If you load yourself up with a bunch of carbs or sugar the night before, it can just take longer to get into a fasted state. And people tend to have more wonky blood sugar responses. And it's not a very smooth transition. So, and then on the end, why I say low carb out is that when you finish a fast, you're very insulin sensitive, you're very, glucose hungry, and you'll have a very pronounced blood sugar response to carbohydrates that you don't normally have because of the fasted, what happens in the fasted state. Our cells become much more insulin sensitive and a lot more alert to, where's the blood sugar, where's the sugar in the blood. So if you go out of a fast and the first thing you have is a piece of cake or something like that, you're going to have a really pronounced blood sugar response, a very high spike. And you're going to be a lot more sensitive to carbs outside, or, transitioning out of a fast than you normally would be for those first couple of days. So I just suggest people the first meal breaking a fast is low carb, and the meal going into a fast is low carb. And it can just really smooth out that transition in and out and make it so much easier. You'll feel a lot better that way.
So you're saying it's only that meal before and after. It's not like days of low carb before and after.
No, not necessarily days before. It can just be the meal before. And then with my program, I have like a whole refeeding plan for my clients that do the program to really optimize the regenerative and healing benefits of fasting. So we do bone broth, we're doing specific nutrients and vitamins that are depleted during a fast. We want to replenish those. So I have a whole refeeding plan for people in my group program. But what I can say for people that are just listening here is that, that first day or two, you're going to be very carb sensitive. So on the tail end, I guess I would say low carb a little bit longer, but going into a fast, it can just be the meal before.
Gotcha. And what about with exercise? Is that something that people need to change pretty significantly during a fast?
It depends a little bit on the state of their health going into a fast, and of course their exercise routine outside of fasting. So one thing that does happen during fasting is that we don't have those carbohydrates available for quick energy. So what people will find is that if they do something like strength training or you're trying to sprint, you're trying to get a lot of energy really fast, something that's high intensity, you're going to poop out so quick. You're going to feel pretty awful. And then you're going to be really hungry afterwards. So what I tell people is definitely to stay active during your fast. You want to keep moving, and fasting and exercise can be very synergistic, and you can get pretty incredible results from doing them together the right way. But just staying active and mobile. And if you regularly do high intensity exercise, like a HIIT workout or powerlifting or something like that, you're definitely going to want to dial it down and do something that's just a little bit more in the kind of moderate intensity range, maybe a walk or a bike ride. If you're a runner, then a jog, right? If you're a power lifter, then maybe just an easier maintenance kind of strength training workout. But you really don't want to push or challenge during that time. And then if you've never done fasting before, then I would be really careful about adding exercise into your first fast. I would just say activity, not necessarily exercise. So going for walks, staying active, maybe some yoga or stretching, some swimming, something that you enjoy, that's pleasurable and easy for you, that isn't going to, like if your muscles are burning, then it's probably too intense while you're fasting.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like a lot of the training that I tend to do is very glycolytic. So I'm imagining if you're out of glycogen, it's not going to feel very good to train that way. And how does mindset about fasting impact the results that you get?
Yeah, I think this is a really important piece that's often overlooked. So when it comes to mindset, we want to see fasting as a tool, right? And an opportunity. I think a lot of people see fasting as a punishment, for the cookies they ate, or for behaviors, for food choices, for things like that, or because they're unhappy with their body size or the way that they look. And I think that can be a really destructive mindset to be in when you go into fasting. So similar to exercise, right? If you are going to the gym because you hate your body and you want, oh, my thighs don't look red, or my butt's not, whatever, and that's why you're going, you're not going to get the same thing out of it as somebody who's going to the gym because they're honoring their body, because they're doing it out of love and respect and care, right? And I think we can view fasting in a very similar way, that it's not as a tool for punishment or torture, or it's not because you did something wrong, that fasting is really a tool for healing, for regeneration. It's a tool for recovering from, poor health conditions and things like that. And when we come into it with that mindset from a place of love and care and honor for our bodies, and we're going to go into it saying, I'm going to listen to you, body. If you tell me that we're done fasting, right? That it's not coming from a really rigid or strict place. I think that is really important. And also, if we're super stressed out when we're fasting, it can blunt a lot of the health benefits. So I think that people need to choose when they're doing a fast, and also recognize that if you have a super stressful life, or you're going through a really stressful time, then maybe that's not the time to be doing fasting, because that added stressor can just really be too much, for your body. So I think there's a time and a place for it. And when people are under a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, they're going through something really challenging, like a divorce or, a health crisis or things like that, we have to remember that fasting is a stressor. And just like exercise, we're stressing our body so that it will adapt and get stronger. Fasting can do that, but also exercise in the context of somebody that's already maxed out is going to do more harm than good. And fasting, I think the same rules apply, where we can do more harm than good if we're coming at it or we're going into it already super stressed out or maxed out. And also if we're going into it with this kind of punishment restriction type of mindset that I think just really backfires and blunts a lot of the health benefits.
I love it. I love that analogy to the exercise piece because it's so, I feel like that's anything we do for health. If it's coming from a place of punishment, it's not going to be as good. If at best, it won't be as good. And at worst, it could actually harm your health. So how does fasting as a practice or something that you're teaching your clients fit in with your mission of helping people overcome things like fatigue and digestive issues?
Yeah, so fasting was a tool that I used. So I know we didn't talk about this in my story, but I had a lot of digestive issues and a lot of fatigue and autoimmune issues that really sparked a change in career and, my path to becoming a nutritionist and trying to help people also in that same space. Because fasting has really unique regenerative capacity for healing and regeneration. And that's because in a fasted state, our bodies have to kind of go into this recycling mode where we go looking we need energy, right? But we're not getting it from our food. So our body has to tap into its reserves and its stores. And we have this incredible recycling system built in where we go through and kind of find all the junk, the broken pieces, the stuff that's not working, and it gets repurposed into fueling our energy needs. So you get this incredible kind of clearing away of inflammatory proteins. You get clearing away of old immune cells. You get clearing away of misfolded proteins, things that aren't functioning properly inside of a cell. And then with refeeding, we get all that stuff gets rebuilt and remade, and we get stem cells that are activated. There's just this whole incredible regenerative process that happens. And it's important to remember that happens with refeeding, right? So we have this recycling, repurposing kind of tear down process that happens during a fast. And then the rebuilding regeneration that happens during the refeeding. So I see them as equally important. And that's why in my program, I have a whole unit on refeeding and make an emphasis of that for sure. But it can help for people that have chronic health issues, that maybe have autoimmune conditions or are dealing with some chronic fatigue and things like that. Fasting is a really great way to challenge, especially our metabolism, our energy, our ability to produce energy and make it stronger. So it can help with people with fatigue that way. For those with autoimmune disease, fasting is not always a great fit, but for people that it is a good fit for, it can help because we have that clearing away of old immune cells that are attacking the wrong parts of the body. They get cleared away, and then we get new ones, brand new ones that don't have that same programming, and they're healthier. We get less autoimmunity and things like that over time. And then for people with digestive issues, the digestive system gets an incredible break when we do fasting. I think we underestimate how hard our digestive system works and how much energy it uses to do that, to digest our food. So for people that have chronic digestive issues, taking a break from eating can be very healing and regenerative for the gut. It's not always appropriate, and that's why I think it's really important to work with somebody who knows what they're doing and a healthcare professional that you trust. But in those instances, I've just seen it really turn people's health around, and I experienced that myself, that fasting was a big part of my healing process.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to guess that there's a lot of people that are interested in this program. I'm like, maybe I should be doing this fasting program that Deena teaches, because I've learned about all this, well, not all of it, but a lot of it as far as the benefits of fasting. And I feel like the modified fasting is a little bit newer for me when it comes to understanding it and seeing people do it. So I love how you take people through the full process, and it's not just this like 5-day thing that they do and hope for the best. So for anyone who is interested in learning more about the way that you approach fasting and possibly working with you on that for their health, where can they learn more about your services?
Yeah, I have a website, therealfoodnutritionist.com, that they can come to. And on there, I have a free training for anybody that's interested. And it's specifically about intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, that type of intermittent fasting, because a lot of people are doing it. And I think a lot of people are doing it the wrong way. And they're maybe not getting the benefits that they want, or it's just backfiring. It's making their blood sugar crazier. It's making their stress hormones higher. And it's not really helping. So I teach people in that training video the biggest mistakes that are really common, and then also go into, which we didn't cover today, is how to do it the right way so that you get the benefits that you're looking for, and it's easy to do, and it feels very natural and healthy to do. So that free training is on my website. And then there's also a link there to join the waiting list for when I run the fasting program that does modified fasting. If they want to get on the wait list or find out when the next group program is, I would love to have them come to my website, and you can just sign up for the wait list.
Awesome. And just to reiterate, that's therealfoodnutritionist.com.
Yeah.
Make sure you put the THE in there, but we'll make sure to link to that website in our show notes for today's episode number 68. Well, Deena, it was so awesome to talk to you today and to learn more about fasting, intermittent fasting, time-restricted eating, all the different fasting that I have learned so much about just working with you as a client over the last year. So I'm really glad that you could come on the show today and share your wisdom with our audience. And thanks to all of you for listening for the last 45 minutes to an hour or so. We'll look forward to seeing you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Are you a dietitian or nutritionist business owner that wants to create an online business that attracts, converts, and serves your dream clients? Then keep listening, because I have a special opportunity that will help you create the profitable, joy-filled nutrition business that you always wanted. In my signature group coaching program, the Nutrition Business Accelerator, you'll learn how to start, grow, and scale your online nutrition business to 6 figures and beyond, so you can experience the financial and time freedom that you desire. Inside the program, you'll learn how to attract high-paying clients who are excited to work with you and willing to pay you the rates you deserve. You'll get training on how to effectively sell your services in a way that feels authentic and converts prospects into paying clients without feeling pushy or salesy. And you'll get step-by-step instructions on how to create programs and services that provide transformative results, leading to glowing testimonials and referrals from your current clients, so you can have the greater impact that you desire in the world around you. Inside the program, you'll get mentorship and guidance from me, a compassionate coach who's built her own multi-6-figure online nutrition business. So that way you never have to feel stuck in your business again. I created this program to help struggling dietitian and nutrition entrepreneurs get clarity on who they serve, how they serve them, and how they can stand out in a crowded market so they can more easily attract dream high-paying clients into their online nutrition business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, go to lauraschoenfeldrd.com/NBA to learn more about the program and get on the wait list. That's lauraschoenfeldrd.com/NBA, which is short for Nutrition Business Accelerator. Doors are opening soon, and you don't want to miss out on this one-of-a-kind business coaching opportunity. Let's accelerate your nutrition business together. I'll see you in the program.